How about that?
There you are.
Here I am. Hey, Dave.
How wonderful to see you.
Good to see you too.
Man, can I tell you what a delight this is? I feel like I get to meet friends from around the world.
Yes,
And then a couple years down the road, get together over coffee remotely and catch up again.
right? It's crazy. I
It's
know.
crazy.
Who would have thought?
It's the best, actually. It's a wonderful way to spend my
Especially for
Friday
you.
morning. Yeah,
Especially for you. It's awesome.
it is. It's not bad at all.
Yeah.
So it's noon where you're at. You're on lunch break.
Yeah. I'm no, not yet. I'll take my lunch break once we're done.
Okay, this is considered work still.
Well, yeah. I was in actually sanding some laps and stuff like that before I came in here.
Gotcha. Well, thanks for taking the time.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. I'm kind of shocked.
What, in what way? About what?
I don't know anybody and I don't know anything. It's like I mean I know a lot of stuff, but I don't. It's like I was. Uh, we messaged the other day and I was like about Josh Hall, and I'm like, God, what lineage, to be working with Skip Fry and you know, and I was actually I went home and I was talking to my wife and she goes, so I was telling her about it, and she goes, well, you've been studying all this stuff just like, by looking at boards, and like now with Instagram, everything's right now. So I actually get to see boards right now, and I study them and I study the surfing and I do all that stuff. And that's how I come up with my stuff. Because otherwise, I don't have anybody.
Hmm. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I'm trying to process is like it's a blessing and a curse for Josh, I guess. Like if your claim to fame is that you worked under somebody else, are you always trying to fill their shoes? Are you always trying
Oh,
to live
yeah.
up to that expectation? Because ultimately I'm trying to analyze like what makes a better surfboard essentially. And certainly he could absorb certain technique and
Yeah.
tutorial from Skip, but you've been shaping boards since 1980, since before Josh was born, or right around
I
when
know,
Josh
right?
was
I
born.
know. I know.
So
I'm
it's kind of
almost.
like you're probably making as good of boards, maybe better boards, just by sheer virtue of the fact that you've got more experience. And so like then I'm analyzing, well, why is somebody more popular than another? Or why can somebody
Oh,
charge more for surfboards than another? And is that
oh yeah.
related to being in Southern California? And honestly, this is all interesting conversation, I think, for the podcast.
Oh yeah. And the other thing about that is that it's like I had that conversation with Ryan Loveless when we were out there when we were working on the Trimcraft thing. And it was so crazy because I'm looking at Ryan, seeing this guy that's like way high up in the industry as far as I'm concerned. And he goes, and I asked him one day, I said, so how many boards have you shaped so far? And he goes, oh, I think I'm in the 3,000 range. And I just went, oh,
Yeah.
I said, I'm almost at 10. And he
Yeah.
goes, yeah, I know. And so it was very interesting, the just perception, some of
So
it was perception.
I'm curious, what is your perception based on then? Like, why did you perceive
Oh
that
gosh.
Ryan is high up in the quote industry?
Um, Popularity. I guess we look at Instagram like in you've talked about that a bunch, and we look at Instagram, and that's kind of the standard almost. And you got people that are Insta famous. They're really good at producing stuff. And I actually listened to Josh Martin right after the Josh Hall one, and he was talking about that, and I was like, it's just interesting. Like it doesn't seem like Josh cares, and it's like that's just what I do. And I'm kind of in that same boat, and I think Ryan is in that same boat too. There's most of the guys that have been in it for a little while, man. They got to produce uh, um, subject matter, but they don't really care. So like they might do a whole bunch at one time and then do nothing for a month.
Right.
And I'm kind of like that. It's like I get busy and I don't have time.
Of course. Well,
You know,
what was your perspective based on before Instagram?
Name recognition.
So where
I
did
mean,
you hear names?
growing up, well, and growing up here, it was, I always felt like we were kind of in the closet,
Right.
to the big brands out in California. And it was crazy because like, my glasser, Derek, Useless Toys, he was telling me, he goes, dude, all the shapers out there know who you are. And I'm like, really? Because I don't know that, because I don't ever, I've only been out to California a couple of times.
Yeah.
So,
What, in terms of building that perspective, where did you learn about those names when you were coming up? Was it strictly surf
surf
magazines or?
magazines. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. Surfer and surfing.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And then Trans World came along and it changed everything, because then it got a little deeper, into the industry when it was,
Yeah.
that was pretty cool. I got a lot out of that. And
Yeah.
into some, I'd always, every now and then we get a hold of like Surfing World or something, or Tracks every now and then. And I'd, grab a hold of that and look at it, especially if it's a surfboard issue.
Right. It's interesting. So my perspective coming from Southern California, actually, I'll say a couple of things. Firstly, when I started the podcast, I probably shared your perspective, which was, who are these names that I'm aware of? And maybe, I should probably go interview those people. Let's start at the absolute top. Let's get Kelly Slater. Let's try to get Skip Fry,
Yeah.
and I've never gotten either of those for an interview, but
I know it's kind of strange.
yeah, I haven't really pushed hard on either. Like
Yeah.
I certainly have connections to Skip, but I
Sure.
just feel like, I almost would rather they know and appreciate what I'm doing and see the value in engaging with it.
Yes.
And then we can have a conversation. I
Yeah.
never want to be trying to beg for an interview and convince them that there's value here.
Right.
But what I was going to say was, my perspective has shifted over the years, where I used to think these other people that the industry, quote unquote, or whoever has vetted for me and says are important, that's who I should get. And over the years, those end up not being the best conversations. And there's one that I don't mind discussing. There's others that I do mind discussing, but the one that I don't is Mick Fanning. Red Bull reached out to me. I think, it was Red Bull. And they go, hey, Mick's going to be in Southern California, for half a day. Okay. He'll be in LA between flights. He's coming by Red Bull HQ. Would you be interested in interviewing him? And I was like, yeah, 3-time world champ. Let's absolutely do it. So I go through the effort of driving through and to Santa Monica and sitting down for the interview with him. And ultimately I got nothing out of him, because he's such a trained professional, and he kind of delivers the same exact talking points. And the things that I actually wanted to engage with were more personal and intimate. And I felt like we never really crossed into that realm to where that felt safe and comfortable. So we kind of kept it superficial. And I was able to use the interview. I was able to actually cobble together a 30-minute introduction with clips from around the web of him growing up and being interviewed when he was young. So I created this introduction that was good. And then the 30 minutes that I got with him became interesting because of the context of the editing that I did.
Okay.
But by contrast, the best interviews I feel like I've gotten are with people whose names I didn't know before. And maybe a listener pointed out to me hey, this guy is doing this really interesting thing in this super small subculture. And they're human interest pieces. I guess that's ultimately what it comes down to, is now the podcast is more human interest focused and less, surf podcast, quote unquote. And and I think that you represent the actual vast majority of shapers that exist around the planet.
I could see that.
You've been quietly toiling away and servicing a community, making tons of boards for that community, then making boards for the kids of the people you originally made boards for, dealing with retailers, dealing directly with customers, doing it from beginning to end, and never really even seeking the limelight,
Oh, right. Because I've had, obviously, you get those people that come along that kind of push you. And I've had people that are like, why don't, I'll put some money behind you if you want to, go start chasing these shops and stuff. And I heard so many horror stories from, from shops growing up, that they didn't pay or they paid slow. And I still hear that. And I'm like, no, I'm good. I'm making enough for it. So I don't need to be that guy.
Good.
It's
How long
not
did
a
it take
number
you to
thing
figure
for
that
me.
out?
Dude, I'm figuring it out every day.
I know, me too.
Every day it's a different level.
It's totally true.
It's almost like it's like a video game. It's like you're leveling up. And actually my wife says that all the time. She goes, I leveled up today. I didn't yell at the person in the line at the grocery store.
I mean, ultimately, I think a lot of that comes down to maturity is developing confidence in yourself to just do what you know is right, despite what all of these other references that you've been looking to.
Oh yeah.
It's just, you know the way to run your business and the way that makes you happy, and just do that.
But I think it's super cool listening to I love I generally with your podcast, I generally like to listen to the shapers. I'll go back, and I've gone back all the way to the beginning, and I've probably listened to all the shaper ones, most of them, several times. I think the one with Josh Hall, that was the third time I've listened to it.
Wow.
And Josh Martin was at least that. And I'll go through and I'll kind of do that. And but it's like I learned history from some of these guys. I mean, it was super cool, the Rich Harbor one, and I'd already listened to that one a whole bunch of times before. But I love the history. The Dick Metz one is my favorite by far.
Best.
Oh my gosh. I have turned more people onto your podcast through that because they want to know history.
I know. And that guy could keep going. Like, I haven't talked to him.
Oh, it sounds like it.
I haven't talked to him through COVID at all. And I'm kind of remiss. I should check in on him. But if I had the time and energy, I could go visit with him weekly, and he would never stop. Yeah.
But it's awesome.
I know.
How cool is that? I mean, I love the history of it.
So I'm curious about the shaper interviews. Are you getting more out of like the technical design type conversation, or is it the history or is it both?
I like the history, and I mean, obviously the person brings the history with them. Yeah. But the technical side, I like to hear, because a lot of times they'll say something and you might not catch it, but I catch it. Mm-hmm. Because it's like they just say something about a bottom or about a fin thing, and it's like, and I just grab onto that and I hold it. Mm-hmm. And I may use it, I may never use it. Right. But I have it.
Yeah. Because even in preparing for this conversation, I was not sure how much design related stuff to ask you, because I don't know.
Nothing.
Okay.
I'm not a designer. I'm a copier.
Or that's
how I've won the shape-offs. That people ask me that. They're like, how did you win those shape-offs? I said, I'm a really good copier.
Really? And you've embraced it. You're okay with that.
I've embraced it. I know better. I'm not an artist. I'm not that guy. Now I can take one thing and I can grab it and put it into something else. I know how things go together. I guess it's a good way to say that. Gotcha. I know what goes with what.
Gotcha.
But and by trial and error also, but I know the guts of it. I've been doing it long enough to know the inside the ins and outs of it.
Well, let's actually go back to the beginning then. I know you started your business, I guess, in 1989, but when did you actually get introduced to shaping, and where did you grow up? Give me the whole origin story.
Oh, okay. I grew up in Atlantic Beach. My dad, actually, we moved here when I was 3. My dad was in the Navy. We got transferred from Virginia. So I was born in Virginia. We moved down here. Then we literally lived a mile and a half from the beach, and I never even went to the beach. Wow. I didn't even know the beach existed. And so
just because your parents weren't into it?
Oh, they weren't into it at all. And my dad was on a ship. So he was gone 9 months of the year, all the time. He was always gone. And my mom just didn't care. But she would take me every now and then. We'd go on the beach but I never saw anybody surf. And this was in the 60s. So there was people surfing. They just weren't where we were at. and I never saw anybody surf. And then a friend of mine introduced me to it. He was talking about it in school when we were in 7th grade. We were just finishing up 7th grade. And he was talking about the surfing. And I was like, what is that? What is this surfing thing? And he was like, oh, and we went to the library, and he got a copy of Surfer magazine, which was in the library. And he started showing me all these pictures. And I was like, you can show me to do this? And I was hooked. So that was 71. So I was a little late bloomer. And then in 73, a friend of mine, well, a guy I knew, was building boards in his garage, and he was like, hey, you want to come build surfboards? I was like, sure. It's like, I don't care, why not? I'm not doing anything.
Yeah.
15. I'm like,
yeah.
I don't need a job. Back then nobody needed anything. I needed a bike. That's all I needed. And so we were building boards in his garage. What I didn't know was he hated sanding, and that was my job. But I loved sanding. I still do.
Interesting.
I love it. I love that part of it.
Interesting.
That's where I learned how to shape, was sanding.
Interesting.
So
what kind of boards was he building? Was he just building his own surfboards? Did he have clientele?
Yeah. We were doing about a board a month, where both of us were in high school, and this was, in the early 70s. So, we were just screwing around. We made our own fins. We did everything. And that was Strickland surfboards. And then we got, I think the largest production we got up to was, I think we were doing 40 boards a week.
Whoa, that's huge.
Yeah. And that was back in the late 70s.
Wow.
Yeah.
And who were the competitors in the area?
There wasn't any.
Got it. That's why you're doing 40 a week.
Yeah. I mean, there was a couple that would pop up every now and then, but we were already so far advanced from them that, we just kind of took off.
So I'm curious where you got materials, and then also what were you charging for a surfboard at that time, and what was the profit margin?
I have no idea how much it cost, because my first 3 years building surfboards, I did it for free.
Oh my gosh, dude, you got totally ripped.
Oh, I got taken, but I wouldn't change it for the world.
Right.
You couldn't do that now. Yeah. I looked at it, and I got one board a year for my pay.
Ripped off.
Oh yeah. Well, I thought I was like, I was hooked up. I got a surfboard. I couldn't afford them, so, totally. But yeah, as far as materials, we used to get them. I mean, we always got Clark foam, and we'd have to drive down. So we'd take a Winnie Strickland, whose label it was. We would drive down in his old beat up car with a trailer, meet Larry Pope at Clark Foam, and Ross Houston from Atlantic Surf Materials used to drive up from Miami and meet us there. And he would have a trailer behind his Mercedes. And we used to pick through and pull out materials and pull out what we wanted. I think we got our resin from Dick Cattree. I think he was bringing in resin. But that's the gist of it. That was pretty much all I remember.
So
I was so ingrained in it, I didn't know.
But it sounds like all the different suppliers, like it was all fractured. So maybe they were supplying like the marine industry and other stuff.
Oh yeah, except for Ross. Ross and obviously US Blanks, they were only supplying surfboard.
Clark Foam, right, at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Okay. But there's no competition, and were surf shops in existence, and were they interested?
Yeah, we did. We had a standing order with one of the shops for 25 boards a week. And we were doing really well. We were actually outselling what they were buying. And with that, they were going to bump the numbers up. But Winnie he was a crafty guy, but he was terrible with money. So anytime any opportunity came along, he grabbed it, not thinking about any consequences. So we ended up doing some boards for another shop, kind of under no label. And the shop we were dealing with found out about it and shut us off.
We
were out of work for a little bit.
So it sounds like obviously if you're moving that many surfboards, the beaches are going to be getting crowded with surfers. Was that the
Yeah,
case?
a little bit, but it wasn't that bad.
Okay.
It wasn't too
Interesting.
bad. I mean, you could still find lots of spots. I mean, the way that our beaches are set up, it's all beach break.
Yeah.
So you can go at the end of every street and surf.
Yeah.
And it might be better at one street than another street because the sandbar kind of filled in. But, for the most part, you could go all over the place. I still hide.
I do too. I mean,
yeah, I don't go where anybody goes.
Totally. I mean, even here, I mean, this is, I surf Huntington Beach in Newport a lot.
Okay.
It's the middle of summertime. The water's warm. It's Surf City, USA. And I still find waves all the time, even on a Saturday in the middle of summer. And it's like, the pier is super crowded. There's 300 people surfing the pier. And then a mile down the beach, there's empty peaks. And they're not as good, but it's surfable. Yeah.
But you're by yourself.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
The reason why I'm curious about pricing, maybe we can just reverse engineer it is because I want to compare it to pricing today. And you don't have to answer.
You know how that works.
Well, you don't have to answer now, and maybe we can kind of work our way towards it. But I mean, my end question is it more profitable or less profitable now? Because the business is at an all-time high. There's more demand for surfboards than ever.
Yes.
But I feel like at the same time, there's also more costs. There's certainly the raw materials cost is at an all-time high, but there's also just regulatory costs, and there's insurances, and there's all of these things that come with running a business now. And so, and the pricing really the end pricing hasn't adjusted at an adequate rate. So I'm thinking back to then, and if you're doing 25, you said 40 boards a week, even if we maxed out, even if he's making $20 profit per board, that's $800 a week in the 70s. That seems like a reasonable living,
Yeah. And at that point, I think I was making $135 a week.
Oh, so you were getting paid at that point?
I was getting paid at that point. By that point, we were all getting paid, but I got paid, I think it was hourly. So not that he was taking any taxes out, but we were getting paid hourly. So, I mean, I was sanding 40 boards a week, and then I helped gloss, and I helped rub out and polish and do all that stuff. So, I mean, we were there a lot.
I just ran the numbers. You're getting paid $3.38 a board.
No, and here's the funny part. So when we were moving a little forward, we were doing Atlanta surfboards, and I was making $4 an hour. And I needed a raise because I had just gotten married, and I needed a raise. And I only wanted a quarter an hour. That's all I needed. And the guy that owned the company was like, no, we're going to put you on piecework. I said, you don't want to do that. We'll put you out of business. So my check, I think at that point was like $140 something a week. And my first check piecework was almost $1,000.
Oh my gosh.
Because it was me and another guy. And we were doing, I think at that time we were doing probably 20 or 25 boards a week. And we were doing everything. And we would, if we needed extra money, we would just add some pin lines to the board.
Yeah. And then
you
charge
got $5 a pin line, and you just charge for it.
Yeah. See, I love that about you. Like, and did he try to renegotiate?
No. And I was like, me and the guy I was working with, we handed him our invoices. We said, you don't have to pay this. You can pay us our normal rate, and we can go back to that. We just want a job. We love building surfboards. We didn't care.
Right.
And his ego wouldn't let him. Wow, and incredible. He was out of business in 2 weeks.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
What a story. How old were you when you got married?
That was in 83.
Okay.
So my wife and I have been together. I mean, we've been married 38 years. Is that right? Yeah,
that'd be right.
Yeah. I just
Congrats.
realized I've been surfing for 50 years this summer.
Oh my gosh. That's insane.
It's nuts.
You don't look old enough.
I know.
I mean, you got the gray, but you got no wrinkles.
My
So
wife hates that, by the way.
really,
Yeah, she's just like, how do you get to stay in the sun and you don't have all the stuff that I don't know.
yeah,
I don't know. I don't feel my age either, so it doesn't matter.
that's good. So the reason why I was asking how old you were when you got married, did your parents have any consternation, or your wife, about you working in surfboards?
No. So here's the thing. So um, when my wife and I started dating, I think she showed up at my house, at my apartment. We were going to go to dinner, and I think we'd probably been dating a week. I mean, it wasn't very long at all. And I was surfing, and it was dark, and the waves were good. And I came up to the apartment. I'm rinsing off in the hose. I only lived a couple blocks from the beach, rinsing off in the hose. And I walk in the apartment, and she's standing there, like tapping her foot with her arms crossed. And she goes, "So what's up?" And I said, "Well, okay, here's the deal. I surf and I build surfboards. If you can deal with that, we're good. I don't go out with the boys. I don't go do anything else. I don't have any other hobbies." I said, "So that's the deal." And she goes, "I can live with that."
No way.
And she brought that up about actually this year, she brought it up to somebody. She was telling somebody that story. And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe I said that."
Yeah, but
I was hardcore. I was like, we're not even playing this.
well, I mean, communication is key in a relationship. And
Yeah. So I pretty
so
much laid it on the table. Of course, it didn't work that way. Once we had kids, I was like, "Can I go surf?"
yeah. But I think you have the responsibility, if you're in a relationship, to give the other person the truth and let them make the best decision for them.
Yeah.
And it sounds like she heard you loud and clear, and she processed it instantly, and she goes, "You know what? That's not a deal breaker for me. Okay, now I understand, and I can adjust my expectations moving forward."
Yeah. I think her dad just accepted it probably a couple of years ago.
Shut up.
Her mom never did. Her mom died quite a few years ago, but her mom was she'd pull me aside and because I didn't really my parents weren't really active. And so she would pull me aside and go, "Are you sure about this? Don't you want to go get a regular job?" And I'm like, "Tell me what else. I don't know how to do anything else."
What would they have preferred?
Anything. something with a steady paycheck where I didn't have to borrow money from them all the time.
Yeah.
To pay rent.
Did your wife work, or does she work? And what's her personality type?
She did. She worked at that time. She actually had a good job. And but then we had kids much straight away, and it was too expensive for her to work. And that meant if she worked, that meant we had to have 2 cars. So we downsized like crazy. And so we lived off of surfboards for 20 something years.
Wow.
Until she finally, actually in 2001, after 9/11, we were dying. I mean, it was bad. We were living on credit cards, trying to make it work, and nobody was buying surfboards. And so she got an opportunity to get a job at Mayo Clinic, and took the job and cried for 2 weeks because she hadn't had a full-time job in 20 years. And the kids were pretty much grown at that point. And so she did that. And literally she started in November, like first part of November. And by the middle of November, orders started coming in like they did during COVID. I saw exactly the same thing at that point. And I went from doing 2 or 3 boards a week to doing 8 to 10 boards a week by myself. And I was 3 months backed up by the time we got to February.
Wow.
And it stayed like that until Clark Foam shut down.
Incredible.
So
what did you guys do about health insurance and that sort of stuff?
We didn't have that.
Right. So that's why your parents are pissed.
Yeah. I mean, we didn't have anything, but I'm really healthy and she's really healthy. And, we just, you made do.
Yeah.
You just did what you had to do. It's a lot different now than it was then.
Well, how old are your kids now?
Oh, let's see. My daughter, I think, is 40. She's actually my stepdaughter. She's 43. I think 43. And then we got a son that's 35 and another one that's 33. He'll be 35, 34. And then we have a bunch of grandkids.
Good for you. That's wonderful.
No, they're expensive.
Is it worth it?
Yeah, it's worth it. You get to give them back.
Good. Yeah, exactly. So in hindsight, talking about kind of from a business standpoint and providing for a family, would you have done it any differently?
We didn't know anything different. We didn't have any guidelines. I had no mentors. I mean, nobody in my family had ever owned a business. We started our so it was really weird. So I was a glasser. I had a glass shop. And so I didn't want to shape. And so I was glassing boards for this guy. You know who it is. It's a local guy, but I was doing boards for him. And I was like, my wife kept going, why don't you shape? Why don't you shape a board? You're frustrated with what you're getting. Why don't you try shaping? So I was like, okay, I'll give it a try. And I shaped a board and I got fired from glassing. So
because you were that much better at it?
No, I was horrible at it. I didn't want to do it. I just
you got fired from the job entirely. Okay.
Yeah. So I had this business, and now I have no shapers. So I had to figure it out. So and that's where I started. I would go into the shops and feel the boards and get them. And I did a lot of ding repair. Yeah. I've done ding repair forever. So I had my hands on so much stuff, and I would just start listening to what people were wanting. And I just kind of dialed into that. And so I'm the shaper that always lets everybody in their shaping room. Like you come in, you bring your friends, and we're going to shape this board. Because I get to have them right in front of me, and I can ask them questions and show them different things. And then nowadays I geek out on it really bad, and I'm like, stop me if I'm going too far. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of that way. But yeah, I started a business and didn't even have any intentions of starting a business.
Right.
I just didn't have any other options.
Yeah, you backed into it.
I backed into it, literally.
And it sounds like there was a community need for it too, probably.
There was. And I mean, it took a little while. But one of the shops got behind me pretty much straight away. They saw some value in it, of having a local board. And we did really well with them for a while, and then it just didn't work. And
yeah. When did you introduce the Whisnant label?
That was in '89. Okay. But my first couple of boards didn't have a label, because I didn't have a name for them. I didn't want to call them my last name because I hated my last name.
By the way, where is your last name from?
Anything else? It's actually Swiss.
Okay.
I thought it was German until I talked to somebody from Germany, and they said, no, the letters aren't in the right spot. They're not. It's not written out right. And I was like, okay.
Sometimes that gets changed though in the US.
Yeah. Oh, so. Yeah. I don't know. My dad always said we were German, Scotch, Irish, German.
Okay.
I was like, okay, what's that? Whatever that means.
Yeah. Not to
I'm
jump.
a Heinz 57.
Right.
Right.
Not to jump too far forward, and we can come back, but it sounds like your the way that you got involved in board building is a perfect fit for the Trimcraft project.
Yeah.
I mean, it really is. You were designed to run that program.
Yeah. So it's pretty crazy. Yeah. And I'm the oldest shaper in their stable.
Would you mind explaining, number one, the concept of Trimcraft? I think we've hit it once or twice on air, but I think it's actually really awesome and it doesn't get enough airtime. And then number two, how it benefits the consumer. And number three, how it helps you run your business.
Well, the concept of it obviously is that try not to stumble on this. Ryan's whole objective was he got too busy doing his own label, had Trim Surf Shop, and through other people around him said, you got to do something else. And Ryan figured out that he would do, trim surfboards. And so the Trimcraft thing came about. Let's let these new shapers that are coming into it that are decent. I mean, the guys that are doing it now are blowing my mind. I mean, and they've been shaping, like you said, I'm old enough to be their dads, easy. And well, John Simon, I'm old enough to be his grandfather because I actually have a granddaughter that's his age. So
crazy.
But so it was basically there to kind of build up the community. And it wasn't originally designed to spread out from Santa Barbara. It was supposed to stay kind of in California area. And then it just it morphed into other stuff. Phil at Glide Surf Shop up in New Jersey took a hold of it and started doing some on the East Coast. And then Derek, my glasser, actually is really good friends with Ryan. And he had kind of pitched that idea to him about doing them in the Southeast. And I'd already talked to Ryan a little bit about that, but we didn't really connect on it because I couldn't produce. I could only produce 6 or 7 boards a week by myself. So I was real limited and I was already tapped out with what I had going on. So once we got that going, it's working well. I mean, we're doing pretty well with it without really pushing it at all. But it's as far as the guts of it, that's the guts of it. And it just kind of keeps going from there.
So I'll explain a little further. A lot of board builders, and we're talking about Ryan Loveless.
Yeah.
A lot of board builders develop enough demand that they can't supply. And it seems, and there's a couple of models to help get to the next level. Mm-hmm. One of them is shaping machines.
Yeah.
So you bring in, but Ryan has been opposed to shaping machines publicly, so yes. It's one thing if you have your own personal opinions that you keep to yourself and then you get new information or you have new constraints on life. And so then you adopt new ways. I feel like Ryan got himself into a corner where he had talked publicly about not using machines.
Oh yeah.
And then he found himself in a position where a machine would really help him grow his business. Mm-hmm. And a model that people have been doing for decades now is having ghost shapers.
Yeah.
Where when I was growing up, you could go buy Rusty at the local surf shop or Channel Islands at the local surf shop. And I was under the perception that all those boards were shaped by Rusty or all of those Channel Islands were shaped by Al Merrick.
Everybody here still believes that.
Yeah. Understandable, right? Because they're branded that way. It's intentional.
It is. But they did a great job.
Totally. And so what Ryan's kind of little difference or variation was an investment in the upcoming board building community. So we're going to create, I think at the time it was 3 Trimcraft models, and they weren't just his. It was one of his boards, Jerry Lopez design and a Rich Pavel design. Right. So we're not going to offer 20 different models. We're just going to offer 3 that fill these 3 different categories of surfboard, but we're going to brand them.
I wish they were still there.
Do you?
It'd be a whole lot easier because I have to shape all of them.
How many are there now?
7 or so.
Okay. I didn't realize.
Yeah. There's too many. And I'm the only one that shapes all of them.
Oh, really?
All the other shapers have models that they do.
Gotcha. Okay.
So when we're doing a new model, I have to reach out to the shaper that's doing that model.
Right.
And find out the information on that model.
Gotcha.
So,
but the genius, or I think the kind of forward thinking part on Ryan's behalf was, so we have these 3 models, but
you can say crazy. It's okay. Definitely. I think it's crazy.
Do you?
I do a little bit.
Well, I think the forward thinking part is the putting the shaper's name on the board, like not making it a ghost shaper.
That's huge.
But putting
Yeah,
your name on it,
we get to
or
sign them.
Michael Arnold's name on it,
Yeah,
or whatever,
yeah,
so that it's an investment in that kid's future or your
yes,
future as well. And the
yeah,
consumer has full transparency. So they know
yes,
this is a Trimcraft model and it's held to a certain standard and it was designed by Ryan or Rich or whoever,
yeah,
but this local shaper shaped it. And so it's an investment in that person's kind of growth and development as well.
yes. Well, the cool thing about that too is that we have a little, I do at least, I don't know about the other guys. I have some flexibility in the shapes.
Do you?
Yeah, because I can modify them as far as like bottom contours and stuff. I can modify them to fit our wave.
You would want to.
Yes, for the most part, they work. I've
Yeah.
ridden them; they work.
Yeah.
But it's, but yeah. So I do have that. I have that freedom to kind of modify them. And when we get customs in, I can modify the custom.
Good.
So it's not just a stock board.
Right. So for the consumer, it's a great situation because they can have a Rich Pavel design or
Oh
whatever, but
yeah,
designed for their local waves and built
yeah,
through their local business.
yeah.
But they still get the association with the brand Trimcraft that they,
With a national brand.
exactly. So how does it benefit your business? You're running a surfboard shop. How does that support you?
Sometimes it's a little stressful, but for the most part, because they're models, Ryan actually shaped most of them. I have plugs for them. So Ryan shaped them, and Bob Haxon actually glassed them.
Nice.
Glassed them, and then they sent them over with, there's no fins, they're just sanded finish. So I have things that I can look at. Now I've shaped enough of them, I don't have to look at them anymore. But it is nice because I can come in and I can do 8 pretty quick. I just, I skin all the blanks, I draw the outlines, I cut them all out, I start shaping them. And
Gotcha.
so they go pretty quick. I can shape those a lot quicker because my custom stuff, almost every board I build is custom. So I'm dealing with, let's see, I generally shape in the 8 boards a week range, 6 to 8 a week. And so 8 of those boards might be all single customs, like one person per board. So I have to deal with that person on this board and so on and so forth. And so it's very time consuming and very taxing.
Yeah.
And, but I love it. I love that.
You love the engagement with the customer?
Yeah, I love that. I feed off of it.
You're a people person, that's for sure.
I didn't used to be.
Really?
Oh yeah. And when I'm outside of my shaping room, I'm really quiet. Like people think I'm kind of stuck up because I'm like, I don't like to look at people in the face. I'm trying. I've been working on all that stuff, but it's really hard for me.
It's funny. My perception of you is that you're like you're very jovial, you're happy, you're always cracking jokes. So I'm surprised to hear that.
Yeah, pretty much. It's that what is it, that thing where you're so nervous that you have to do that to make yourself feel like you're okay.
I see.
Yeah.
It feels natural to me. You feel fine to me.
I've been doing it long enough. I got
playing the part
right
long enough
to the side. Yeah, I got the script. So it's like, follow those notes.
Follow the Mike Whisnant character.
Yeah. What you don't know is my phone's sitting right here and it's got all the notes,
That's funny. I guess what I was asking about how it benefits your business probably relates more to if you were in a downturn economy. I think the way that Trimcraft traditionally is good for business is you've got that factory, you have to do a certain number of boards a week. And if you're not doing Whisnant labels, it's really nice to have this kind of supplementary label being pushed through that maybe has less, it's not necessarily as subject to the whims of the market because it is a national brand. So you can kind of have the dependency of that.
Well, the cool thing on that was the plan, and COVID changed it.
Yeah.
So because in January of last year is when Derek and I went out to California, met with Ryan. He worked with me on all the models. We spent 4 days in Santa Barbara with him, working on the models, and he was showing us different things. And at that time, I was doing about 4 boards a week. I was probably 4 or 5 boards a week and staying pretty steady. But we were like, gosh, if we could just get a couple more a week, that would be awesome. And then COVID happened shortly after that, and we kind of shut it down. We didn't tell anybody that we were really doing it, as far as the Southeast was concerned. And then we started getting so many orders in, we were like, we're just going to let this be organic. And we didn't really go after any shops. And we started having shops calling us and reaching out to us like, hey, we saw that you were kind of doing them. Would you do some for us? And we're like, sure, we'll do that. And so it's very, on our side of it, it's been very organic. Okay. And it's been we've gotten some really good relationships out of that.
Good.
But I don't push my boards. We don't push my boards at all. I don't need to.
Right.
Like my boards don't go into the same shops that Trimcrafts go into. There's one that it does, but it's a friend of mine that owns the shop.
I don't know if this translates to business at all, but I think the association with the national brand is also just good for Instagram, because when I'm watching your Instagram or Derek's here in California, I can appreciate the Whisnant boards that you're doing, but when I see something that's in my realm of familiarity over here on the West Coast, then it almost validates your work in a way, in a weird way.
100%. That's exactly that's the only reason why we do it. It's fun. I mean, I love Ryan, and it's super fun to do those. And we just did another brand that I kind of ghost shaped on, and that we glassed, and that was super fun. It's fun getting my hands on other people's stuff. I like touching.
Yeah, totally.
I love it. I get a kick out of it. We do some backyard guys that come through, and they come in, and I had a guy the other day, and he was like, oh, I'm so intimidated. I didn't want to bring any boards to you because I didn't want you looking at my stuff. And I'm like, don't you want to get better? And he's like, well, yeah. I said, I'm not judging. I don't care. We've all been there.
Yeah.
Like, who am I? I'm a kook. So I just, and then I brought him in, and we looked at his board and kind of dissected it, and just set him a little bit more at ease. Okay. So
everybody has that same insecurity that you were talking about, feeling about the industry,
Oh yeah. It's like it's some big giant something over in the corner, and it's really not.
It definitely is not. And it's also way more nebulous than people think. Like there isn't a centralized industry trying to hold some gatekeep people out of it,
Yeah.
And to be honest, even if they are, or even whoever thinks that they're in that inner circle, they're really just trying to do what you have, which is a community-based business that is connecting with people that are actually surfing every day.
Yes.
So,
yeah, I've had a couple of friends of mine in the industry that have called me like over the years, and they're like, how do you do it? Because for 30 years, I did it by myself. And they're like, how do you do it? And I would explain to them how I did it. Like, this is how I do it, but it probably won't work that way for you. You have to figure out what works for you. And they never did it because they still wanted to be big.
Yeah.
I wanted control. I wanted to have control over it.
It's a perfect segue actually to my next line of questioning, which is, talk to me about the value of delegation, and also how you and Derek met and connected, and what the value is in that relationship.
That's a pretty cool story. So Derek traveled all over the world. His parents were, the jobs that they were in, they were all over the place. He lived in Japan. He lived in, I think he was born in like Ohio, but was there for 6 months, and then he was in Hawaii. So he's been all over the place. And so Derek ended up, his first custom surfboard that he got was one of mine.
Oh my gosh.
And he remembers the story. Like that was 30 something years ago, about 30 years ago, I think it was. And so he tells almost. And so he tells the story about how I called him and talked to him, and, and went over the order with him. And he remembers it all super vivid. He still got the board.
Wow.
But he ended up getting a job, going to school and getting a job, moved out to the West Coast, actually ended up going to Ray Lukey's factory and to get some ding repair done. And Ray was like, well, do you know how to do ding repair? And he goes, I've done a couple. And he goes, you got a job, kid. So he hired him, like doing ding repair. And so he did that for a while. And then he went to CI and was glassing for them. And then over to Jeff Hull Fiberglass and glassing for them. And then so Derek's family lives here. And so he would come back and he'd come by and see me. And so, and then eventually he ended up he was like, I'm tired of California. I just got to get back to some semblance of normalcy for my family and everything else. So he came back here and I was bringing him in to do some extra glass work for me whenever I needed it. And then one day he goes, I think I'm going to open a glass shop. I said, good, because I'll send you all my stuff. and then I was like, wait a minute, I have a glass shop. Why don't you just take this? And so that was 2 years ago. And he's the first person he doesn't work for me. I technically kind of work for him almost, but he's the first person that I've ever trusted to touch my boards in a long-term thing. Short-term, I've done that, but long-term, he's so good. I can't do what he does. I haven't picked up a squeegee in 2 years. And
how's that working out for you?
Awesome.
Is it?
That's the crazy part. So financially, I'm not good with math, but all I know is that my bottom line is so much better than it was when I was doing boards by myself. And it's a weird dynamic. It works. Some of the other local shapers around here are still doing boards by themselves. I'm like, guys, you don't even understand how much better it is. You have so much more free time and you're making the money that you should be making. And, but yeah, it's nuts. That's why I don't have to go up on my prices so much. And like you were talking about the industry and how prices have gone up, and I don't have to because my margins they're good now. It's weird. Like I was doing everything myself and the margins were terrible.
Yeah.
Now I'm doing it. Now I don't have control over the resin, the cloth. I don't have to buy any of that stuff. And it's way better.
So yeah, I could break that down a little bit. Like you obviously aren't just doing the actual work of laminating the boards. You're also not now worried about the ordering process, the accounting process on the back end. Yeah. All of that is handled by him.
Yeah.
So not only does it free up time, it frees up anxiety.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Because I had a schedule. I would shape Monday and Tuesday, airbrush on Wednesday, laminate both sides and hot coat decks on Thursday, hot coat bottoms on Friday, sand on Saturday. And that was my schedule for 30 years.
That's insane. And so what has that done for you personally? Does it make your surfboards, are you a better shaper because of it? Are you a better husband because of it? Like, what has it done for you?
No, I pretty much suck as a husband. My wife will tell you that, but it's okay. I know I know my place. But no, it lets me put more attention into the shape for sure. And I get to surf more.
Right. That's key.
That's the thing.
And how does that affect your shaping?
I don't know.
Is it beneficial?
It keeps the cobwebs out. So it definitely, it's bad. No, it's actually bad because when I go surf, I'm thinking about the 10 things that I would do different to this board. So I can't stop. So most of the time I'll just change the fins and I'm okay.
Yeah.
For a little while. And then I've got to come in and shape another board and it's just, yeah.
I guess,
it's bad.
It's bad. I get the joke and I get what you're saying, but it's good because if you weren't surfing, you wouldn't be thinking about the 10 things. You wouldn't even have the time to fix the 10 things on the board.
No. And I spent years with that.
Yeah.
It's like, I'll just ride this board this will be my board for the year.
What's the next thing that you could delegate out in your business?
Nothing. I mean, I'm in control of my company and my boards. and Derek has the glass shop. So it's you did a one of your podcasts with Blake from Panda.
Yeah, Blake Peters.
And he was saying the same thing. You know, he was saying how at Pure Glass, he rents a little space and he gets to come in there and shape, and he gets to see the boards getting glassed at the same time.
Yeah.
And so I still have my hands in a little bit of it. Like I still do all the nasty stuff. I still grind laps and put fin boxes in, or route holes for fin boxes and leash cups and stuff like that. And I airbrush. I still airbrush because we haven't found anybody that's willing to not make any money to do that. So I'm the chosen one. But yeah, it's, I don't know. No, there's nothing. I don't have anything else to delegate.
Accounting,
unless somebody else.
Back-end stuff.
Oh, no.
Marketing, website.
I do all that stuff.
And you're good at it and you're happy with it?
Oh no, I suck at it. But it's like, you know, my bookkeeping, I'm spot on.
Okay.
I'm good at that. I've always run my business in the black forever. I've never been in the red.
Good.
I've never owed anybody any money. You know, I've always been good about the people that I learned from in that part of it didn't pay their bills, took people's deposits and would just put them in their pocket and spend it. And I looked at that and I went, that's just wrong.
Yeah.
And so when I started my business, it was funny because back in the Clark Foam days, the guys in Melbourne that we got our blanks from, they would call me and say, hey, you seen this guy around? And I'm like, yeah, I've seen him around. I'm like, he owes you money, doesn't he? And they're like, yeah. As long as we know he's around, we're okay.
Oh, really?
Like we'll get it. And now we know he's around. We'll come get him.
Yeah.
So I became the not the enforcer, but I was like the snitch, I guess. Well, but that was because I paid my bills all the time, and they knew.
And when the blanks finally come in, you're going to be the one who gets the first call to come pick them up.
I always got first dibs.
Yeah.
I still get first dibs.
And that's the thing, that problem that you're talking about slow pays or late pays, whether it is the shapers paying the blank supplier or retailers paying the surfboard builder that they bought boards from them, that still exists today. And it's a real blight on the industry. Yes. I think it happens more prolifically in the surf industry than it does in probably most other industries. And so if you run your business in the black and if you kind of take care of that stuff, you can thrive because it's such an anomaly. Yeah. Your customers appreciate it. I got a DM. So Scott Bass and I were having a conversation on Spit 2 weeks ago about a listener was inquiring how to communicate with a shaper because his board's late. The shaper said that the board was going to take 2 months. Now it's at 6 months, and he doesn't want to he doesn't want to hound the guy, but he also, wants his board because he paid for it. And
he's already paid for it. Ouch.
I don't know. Yeah, actually, I don't know if he did or didn't. Yeah, but another listener chimed in on that conversation, and he sent me a photograph of a board that he had just picked up. And it's a very well-known San Diego shaper. Yeah. It's a beautiful surfboard. He goes, hey, I went through a similar experience. This was supposed to take 8 weeks, and I think it took 10 months. Oh. And it was because of COVID and all that sort of stuff. But
you can't blame it on that anymore.
No. And
That's not fair.
My response to the customer, the listener, was, yeah, but that board's freaking beautiful. So it washes away any negative feelings you had. He goes, you know what? I would like to agree with you, but the reality is I'll never order a board from this guy again. Right. It's a beautiful board and I love riding it. But if you did that in any other industry, you'd be out of business in 1 year. And the fact that we kind of allow this to happen in surfing is only damaging for the business as a whole. Like, we need to kind of hold each other to higher standards. Yeah. And by the way, he goes, I'm willing to pay for it too. Like, if I have to pay 10% more and it means I'm going to get my board quickly, fine. Yeah, I'll do it.
Well, obviously, it's funny because I talked to some shops and they're like, they're talking about price points on boards. And I'm like, you do realize there's people out there willing to pay $1,500 for a Ryan Loveless mid-length, right?
Totally.
And they're like, yeah, but it just scares me. And I'm like, don't let it scare you. Embrace it. Take their money.
Yeah.
I mean, they're sitting out there waiting. And it's like, you know, that person that you were talking about, they don't mind. They want the product.
Well, not only,
but I mean, if I'm going to charge that much money, at least communicate.
Totally. And
I mean, be transparent.
We've had this conversation about pricing a lot on the podcast, and I've had it individually with shapers and listeners who are surfers. The biggest resistor to increasing pricing is always the shapers. Exactly what you just said. They go, I'm afraid. My customers have been paying this forever. I don't want to increase prices. But the customers that are picking up that surfboard from them are driving an $80,000 Tesla. They ride a $5,000 bicycle. They have these expensive golf clubs when they pop the trunk to pick up the board. And it's like, one golf club costs more than your surfboard. Yes. Yes. And you're like, all that I'm telling you to do is raise the price $100 or $200, you know?
Yeah.
And
you know what's crazy? So I did that a couple of years ago. So I was watching, and this was, it's probably been 10 years now, maybe. So everybody that came in asked for a deal.
Right.
And I'm like, my prices are already set at deal prices. Like, I'm trying to make it to where you don't have to ask for a deal. That's the deal. But everybody asked for a deal. So I was like, fine. So I always have a thing about raising my prices in January. That's my time. I come out of Christmas, I go into January 1st. I'm like, there's my price increase. That's what you're going to get. And so I did that. I always raised it like $10. So this year I raised it like 50. I was like, I'll show you and I'll give you your deal, but it's going to be the same price,
right,
that you were going to pay last year.
Right.
And so, but nobody asked for deals anymore.
Perfect.
I went up $50 and people quit asking for deals. I was like, there's a sweet spot in there to where the consumer has already valued your product.
Exactly.
Because I don't post my prices anywhere. The first time my customers see my prices, probably 9 times out of 10, because I don't get a whole lot of orders on email and stuff. Most of it's like walk-ins. And so they come in, and the first time they see my price list hanging on the wall. I mean, it's plain as day. It's on the wall. But they see it and they're like, oh, cool.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, that means I can go up.
Maybe you'll find what the threshold is. But
yeah.
I agree with you. And this is studied in MBA programs and all that sort of stuff is, there's a perceived value and you dictate that essentially. Yes. So you've already, by the way, done the hard work of 30 or 40 years of board building. So you can justify whatever the pricing is. Now, the way that the customer perceives your product is strictly based on what you tell them to expect. And if you go into a liquor store to buy a bottle of wine and there's a $30 Pinot Noir and a $40 Pinot Noir, you go, you know what? I'm going to splurge tonight and drink the better bottle of wine and buy the $40 bottle.
Yeah.
There's no objective measure that says that $40 is better. Your only thing is your perception based on the pricing. And so that's what the consumer is doing. If your price too low, they come in and they go, oh, these boards aren't as good. And I'm going to ask for a discount. If you price them at $1,500, they come in and they go, this guy must be the best guy in town. You know? Well,
you hope that. But I mean, that's a crazy thing, because I was asking Ryan about that when we were out there talking to him, and I said, how did you do that? Did you just decide one day that you were going to go up? He goes, no. He goes, I was so busy. He goes, I was probably almost 6 months backed up.
Yeah.
He goes, I couldn't sleep at night. He goes, it wasn't that I wasn't making any money, but he goes, I figured there was the only way I could control this ordering was to go up on my prices. He goes, it scared the crud out of me. He goes, I didn't know, it could have failed miserably. But he goes, I did it, and I did it across the board. Like, everybody that had their order in, it was their $800 board was now 15,000 thereabouts, you know.
Yeah.
But and he goes, I didn't lose one order. Matter of fact, I gained orders.
Yeah.
And I'm like, very interesting. But it is, it's and sometimes it's your community. Like our community, a $1,500 board is going to sit on the rack.
Right.
We have the money, but our town is so spread out and our demographic is so spread out that the affluent sections, there's only a few affluent sections. They got the money. They got no problem with spending it. And they'll come into me and order 3 or 4 boards at a time and not even blink. And, you know, but for the shops, it's hard. It's a hard sell for them. But they need like a section that they have, like a Christensen and, you know, a Loveless, and have a section to where this is the elite.
Right.
And then I'm looking at the elite section going, I want to be in that section.
Yeah. Well, so even with these price increases, can you afford to buy property in Florida, in Atlantic Beach? Okay, you can. You can make a living as a surfboard builder.
No.
And I'm saying that because in Southern California, I guess what I want to ask you is in contrast to what our situation here is in Southern California, there's very few board builders that can make a good enough living to actually buy property. And that's because homes, like a starter home near the coast, a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 1,600 square foot home near the coast is $1 million.
Yeah.
And so
they're getting there here. I mean, it's because we're getting the influx of the New Yorkers coming down, buying houses sight unseen.
Yeah.
Like we bought our house. We've been in our house about 28 years, I think. And we bought it for $89,500.
Crazy.
And it's now $400,000.
Crazy.
So
yeah. So so as a board builder in Florida, you can make a living. Can you have health insurance? What my concern,
because my wife works at Mayo.
Well, that's an answer for a lot of people.
That's the only way. That's the only way.
The concern is, what I'm trying to get to is, I don't want to just sit here and talk about raising board prices and consumers might listen and be like, oh, why? So everybody can get rich? The point is, it's not so that people can get rich. It's that we won't have board builders in 5 and 10 years from now if it's more profitable, or it just makes more sense for a 20-year-old to go work construction.
Yes.
And so that's why we need to kind of raise prices, is these jobs are going to go away. And
you've been very proactive on that side of it, as far as bringing that to everybody's attention. And it's super appreciated on my side, at least. And because you're allowing the consumer to understand what it takes. Like, how much money does it really cost to build a surfboard? And it's like, well, what does it matter? How much money did it cost to build your iPhone?
Yeah.
You know, you're talking pennies.
Or your
things $1,000.
Exactly.
Yeah, or your tennis shoes, anything else. And you're willing to go overseas to have it.
Yeah.
You know, which is fine. But you got this local artisan building this product rabbit hole.
Do it.
So I always had that with the surf industry as a whole. Like when Clark Foam went out of business, or didn't go out of business, but when he shut it down, I told people that I was around, I said, oh, we're not going to need to worry about this, because now the clothing industry, the Hurleys, the Billabongs, all these clothing industry has so much money. Surely they'll see the need to support the locals, the surfboard builders, because without us, they got nothing. They don't have a product. But that was my perception, and I was almost excited, especially when I started talking to my friends. I mean, it was crazy because Chris Christensen is a friend of mine, and he called me almost like the next day, and he goes, "Are you okay?" And I said, "I don't know." And he goes, "Well, I've got a container coming in. I'll make sure you get some blanks."
Good.
And I was like, "Oh,
that's huge.
Sweet." So, and then Matt Keckley and all the community. And you've led onto this before too. It's like, especially with Instagram, The community knows who the community is. The community will take care of the community.
Yeah.
The outsiders, good luck.
Yeah.
The guys that are Insta famous, the guys that they do the great Instagram pictures, and they're not,
Right.
they've got a full-time job.
Yeah.
They don't need they this, and they, on that note, they can buy a house because they
Right.
got a job that they're making, 80,000 a year or whatever they're making, and the surfboards they're the one kind of killing the price. I told a couple of the backyard guys, I'm like, listen, the time that you spend building a surfboard is the time that you're taking away from your family, or you're not surfing, or you're not doing something else. I said, so charge a premium for that.
Yeah.
That should be the one that you're making all your money on.
Yeah.
Like, you don't have to build 20 a year. You could build 2 a year, and you be the man, and your boards are what my boards are.
Yeah.
And you could have time with your family. And these guys, that's the part I don't think they get.
Well, no, they don't. And that's why part of my advocating for price increasing too is you talking about having Derek as a partner and the way that has enriched your life. And you can actually now surf more. You're going to focus more on shaping and improving kind of these finite things that you never had the opportunity or the luxury to kind of focus on before.
Yeah.
That's what I want to invest in. And so I want your business to be, and I'll use myself as an example. With a podcast, if I have 40 hours a week to focus on the podcast and I'm spending 30 of those hours doing accounting and editing and Instagramming and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And I have the smallest portion of my work week to actually interview you and focus on this part. That's a shame. What I should be having is 40 hours to really focus on the quality of the content. And then all of that other stuff, other people should be doing. And by the way, I'm not good at the accounting. I'm not good at the marketing. And so other people who are experts should be doing that thing. And so that's why I want to pay the $1,500 for a surfboard, is to let the craftsman and the artist be a craftsman and an artist and not have to worry about sweeping the floors or grinding or sanding or whatever.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Yeah. No, and that's exactly right. It's we're all due a fair wage.
Exactly.
I mean, we're not trying to get rich at this. We picked the wrong profession to be rich at it.
Totally.
Unless you're Channel Island or Lost, it ain't happening.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen. But at the end of the day, we didn't get into this to be rich, just like you didn't get into podcasting to be rich. It was just
honestly, I've accepted that. It's like, thankfully I had the luxury to even choose what I could do, because my dad's generation, or my family specifically, like, they had to put food on the table and make ends meet. And my dad, by the way, told me to go get an MBA. He told me to, and he worked in finance and banking, and I'd be making 4 times the amount of money now if I would have taken his advice. Yeah. But the difference is I'm sitting here on a Friday morning at 10, drinking coffee, hanging out with my buddy, and I'm okay with it. It's like surfing the peak down the beach. It's not as good. It's not as, but I'm by myself doing what I want to do.
You might want to rephrase that, because you just said I'm not as good as the peak down the at the pier.
Yeah. Well, the peak down the pier is me driving to LA every day wearing a suit. And that's not, it's like, I don't want to do that. I'd be just as happy doing what I want to do for a quarter of the paycheck, but on my own terms is the point.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly. So. And I was fortunate enough to, coming up in it, I knew what I was getting into somewhat, but I never thought that it would last this long.
Good for you.
I mean, it was a daily thing. It was I never set out goals. I keep track of my boards. I know how many boards I've shaped. I don't know how many I've touched, but I know how many I've shaped. And it's like, and it's very encouraging when I hear other shapers say that. And I know they got a whole different game, but when they say, "Oh yeah, I do about 5 or 6 a week" or something like that, I'm like, Yeah, I don't think so. You got other people doing it too.
Right.
You might do 5 or 6 a week, but you've got 5 other guys doing 10 a week
Yeah.
because you didn't get to be that labeled like that. It doesn't work that way.
I want to go back to a question I asked you earlier, and that is, considering everything that we discussed, hiccups along the way and learning curves and all that, what would you have done differently in your business for the last 30 years?
Nothing.
Okay. You wouldn't have
Nothing.
tried to find a Derek 20 years ago?
I'm not, I learned a long time ago, I'm not a good person to work for. I'm very picky. I'm very particular. And both my boys will testify to that, because my middle son actually started shaping, got pretty good at it. But I said, you got to go do something else that's going to make you some money, because I can't pay you. And I said, unless you can dive into this head first, I said, then you can write off the name and you can make it. I said, but otherwise it's not going to happen. But I also, that both of them will tell you, I'm not fun to work for.
Yeah.
I'm not a good teacher. I don't think. I'm a good teacher if you really want it. Because I got the information.
Yeah.
But I just don't.
They got to show the ambition or whatever.
They got to show a lot of ambition.
Yeah.
Yeah. They got to at least try. And there's a couple of local backyard guys around here that I've kind of mentored a little bit. And I love doing that. That gets me going. But, and especially when they listen to me, and, and I'll joke around with them and stuff and mess with them, but still at the end of the day, when they come in with their next board and they bring it straight into my shaping room and they're like, so tell me what you think about this. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you nailed it. You got it. You heard what I said.
Yeah.
I will tell you everything now. But, most people don't want to learn.
Yeah.
They just don't want to.
Yeah.
And they want to be a shaper. And I didn't start out as a shaper. That's the last thing that I learned how to do. And I didn't want to do that. If the guy would have not fired me from glassing, I'd still be a glass shop.
Right.
Probably. I don't know if I'd ever shaped, because I shaped that one board and it was horrible.
How old are you, by the way?
63.
Okay. Do you have any timeline for retirement?
No. My wife does. She's got a calendar. I would be doing this if I retired.
Okay. And
that's how much I love doing this.
What do you perceive any threats to your business moving forward for the next 5 or 10 years?
No.
Okay.
I don't think that far. Honestly, it's a day-to-day thing. I try not to go too far out into the future. Like I keep a master list of all my orders, and I just feed off the master list into the batch for the week. And so I might schedule out 2 weeks in advance, but it moves around so much that I found that just doesn't work. I just have to. It's really hard for me to order blanks, especially now, because I have to think that far out ahead. And that's hard because my customer base doesn't work that way. Some guys want their board in 2 weeks. Some guys want their board in 12 weeks.
Right.
And nowadays with most of the boards coming in from California, it's 6 months minimum if you get it at all. And so, and everybody kind of, now that we're a year and some change into this, they understand that. So like I had a guy come in yesterday and ordered a couple of boards, and I said, yeah, it's like 8 to 10 weeks. And he goes, oh, sweet. And I was like, did I say 8 to 10? I meant 12 to 14, but yeah. He was like, he knew coming into it that it was going to be at least that.
Yeah. And he thought 6 months. So
yeah. And if you're busy, you better be that far backed up. I mean, well, if you, no, I said that wrong. If you're good, you better be that far backed up.
Right.
Because if you're not that, if you can get a board done in 2 weeks, I don't want your board.
Right.
And it's cheap.
Right.
You know, you'll get the price. That's all you're getting.
Yeah. There's not a lot of 63-year-olds that I know that can kind of put out that number of boards and move that quickly. And what's the key to staying fit and healthy into your 60s?
Sugar.
Oh, shut up. You sound like my grandma. When I was growing up, she's like,
I knew you were gonna ask me that, because everybody, I was listening. So the other day I was listening to Jeff Hackman.
Yeah.
And his one thing was no sugar. Like, he cut out sugar. He goes, I'm gonna surf till I'm 100. And I'm like, oh crap, I got to cut out sugar. And as I'm chugging an orange crush,
dude,
with my Mike and Ike's on the side, as a chaser.
I think there's two keys, two different avenues to success. One is complete abstinence, which is what Hackman's talking about.
Yeah.
The other is Burgess Meredith's smoking cigars every day and guzzling whiskey, where his body was just pickled, and so he lives to 100. And so if you've been weaned on that and that's what works for you, maybe you just stick with it. Because if you try to stop doing it, your body will go into the bends, and you'll just be
it does.
You'll be waiting for the hit of crush.
Yes. Oh yes, absolutely. It's crazy. My wife's been trying to get me on some stuff, and I'm like, and I tried it. I mean, she makes all of our food, so she makes some good stuff. So I eat pretty healthy, and I try to work out. I'd rather serve.
What does that mean? I try to work out.
Well, we have one of those mirror things, and I do that.
No
which
way.
Is super
that high-tech
cool.
mirror?
I love that thing. That thing's amazing.
I thought only celebrities had those.
Oh no, they're cheap.
Really?
That was the cheapest thing that I could find.
Oh wow, I didn't realize that.
We had to do something. Yeah, we had to do something. And
wait, are you talking about an actual mirror? You just got a mirror from IKEA, or like?
No. It's that one. It's the high-tech one. It's the
hologram kind of thing that you're.
Yeah, it's super cool. It freaks me out, but it's kind of cool.
Wow.
I don't like looking at myself in it, but
Yeah.
But I just pretend that I'm the guy working out,
So how often, I mean, do you have a regimen? Are you doing it 5 times a week? Like, what is the regimen? Okay.
The regimen is if I feel like it. Okay. I'm not that guy. I want to be that guy. I'm not. And and when I do, I feel really good, and I have a lot more energy. But if I get to surf more, I kind of have the same thing.
Yeah.
I mean, I went out this morning, it was like knee high, and I had a blast.
Good for you. So do you find though that your surfing benefits from the exercise or any dietary change, or?
No. Okay. Well, it gets my gut down.
Right. I noticed that difference in the last 5 years.
That hurts. It hurts laying on a board,
Yeah.
I think that's why most old guys get into stand-up paddle boards, because they can't lay down anymore, because they'd roll off.
The pressuring that used to be your heel mark is now like a big.
Yes. Yeah.
So how often are you surfing then?
As much as I can. I mean, around here it's so sporadic, and it's kind of tide sensitive, and obviously everything else sensitive. So, I mean, I'll just kind of pop out for lunch, and I'll go surf like for an hour before work and stuff like that. And if it's really good, I'll go after work. I can't, if I've got like a schedule for the day, I have a tough time surfing in the middle of that, because my brain's thinking about, I really need to get in there and shape this board, because I think about every customer like how I would be like as a customer. And I'm like, well, I want you to surf, but I'd rather you shape my board.
Right.
So I think about that. I take all this stuff super personal, probably more personal than I should. but it's, but I have to, I know I have to. And my wife's super encouraging on that. She's like, just go. Just go
Yeah.
for an hour. It's
Yeah.
okay. You know, we live close enough to the beach and it's easy enough. Access is easy enough. I can just pop down there and go surf. So,
in terms of health and fitness, are you surfing like 3 times a week, 5 times a week?
yeah,
Okay.
probably 3. I'd probably say 2 or 3 times a week.
Okay.
I've turned into a weekend warrior, which is bad. I never thought I would ever do that. But it's funny because that's the one thing when I talk to people, I guess because our environment around here isn't so surf related like it kind of is in California. Like in California, if you tell somebody you surf, of course you do. You know, you tell somebody you surf around here and they're like, oh, huh. You know, it's like an oddity still.
Yeah.
And so, and I think about, it's weird because I think, God, I get so jacked up if I know the waves are good and I can go when the tide's right. I still get like I was when I was 15, and I get jacked up and I start shaking and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going to get to paddle out. And I'm like, I hope I don't fall too much.
Yeah.
You know, I start thinking that route.
It's rare to feel that level of excitement, that giddy, childlike excitement as an adult. And so that's the draw for me too. I don't feel like that
with anything else.
Right.
Nothing.
But when you were a kid and you were going to Disneyland,
sometimes shaping will get me like that. Yeah, I'm generally a little like I'm very driven in the shaping part, and sometimes I'll actually forego going surfing because I'm having such a good time shaping somebody's board.
Wow.
So
Funny.
like I did a couple of longboards yesterday, and I was into it because I follow that log wrap on Instagram.
Yeah.
And I'm like studying how those boards look and how they flow in the water. And I'm like, oh, I want to do that. I can't surf like that, but I want to do that. I want to build the board that mimics that.
Yeah.
You know, so.
Do any of your grandkids surf?
I have 3 granddaughters that do. They do. They just go sometimes.
Okay.
My grandsons don't yet. But my 2 boys do. My middle son is really good.
Cool.
So, but now he has to have a job because he has a family.
Yeah, that happens. I feel a need to ask everybody this just because I kind of am keeping a tally in my head, but what surf media do you follow, and do you follow the WSL?
Surf media? Well, there isn't any anymore, really. I mean, obviously, I listen to your podcast probably more than anything, and I love listening to it when I'm shaping. It's like the weirdest thing in the world. Like I get lost in it. I'm listening to I'll actually be way more productive listening to a podcast than I will, especially if it's a good guest, than I will listening to music.
Oh, okay.
And I listen to a lot of music. So, but as far as I used to do Surfer and Surfing, and now they're gone. Surfer's Journal, I have a subscription to them.
Good.
So I get that every month, and I love that. And then that's pretty much it.
You don't spend time on the internet going to surf websites or anything?
No, I mean, Instagram, I'll only follow surfboard companies on Instagram. So I get a pretty good fill of that. And then the WSL, I follow some of it. Like I actually did watch the whole ranch thing. Like I watched the whole weekend. Then that was interesting because they were more about because they were talking about the different boards that everybody was riding, and that dark art stuff and all the different technologies, and this guy's riding a poly on the rights and a epoxy on the lefts, and so on and so forth. That's I dig into that part of it, and I'm watching how their boards are flowing in the wave because that wave is so predictable. So I can watch how the rail interacts with the water. Not that it affects me in any way, but it just keeps me up to date on what's going on.
Is it more informative for you than if they were surfing in the ocean?
No, it's not, but I don't have to sit and wait for the sets.
You do, you just know when they're coming.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's like, oh yeah, commercial break, I'll go make a sandwich because they're turning the machine around or something,
Yeah.
but yeah, for the most part, like I like to watch some heat reviews, so that way I can kind of watch the heat. Like if it's somebody that I really like, I really like Julian Wilson for some reason lately. I just like the way he surfs, and Italo just kind of blows my mind. I can't even comprehend.
Me neither.
Um, but you know,
I
it's
had
it's it's interesting.
I had a text exchange with an employee of the WSL last night that really bothered me because they misinterpreted like their own audience and our audience so hard. And uh, like we level a lot of criticism to the WSL
Uh-huh.
for, for in ways that I feel like are I would like to think that they're constructive, but I guess if you're the recipient of criticism, you just
Right.
get offended by it and you don't necessarily see the construction in it. But my kind
Mm.
of overall thought is just like, we should be running the best surfers in the world in the best waves. That's kind of
Yeah. Yeah.
that seems pretty simple to me. And so
And
all of these
that's what you've always said.
totally. But their WSL employee who was last night was just like, you guys are anti WSL and all of your listenership is anti WSL. And so there's no point.
Wow.
Yeah, there's no point in engaging. And I was just like, I know that you're an
Wow.
individual and you're not speaking
Yeah.
for the company, but
I
goodness
hope not.
gracious, you are misunderstanding. This is shocking how badly you're misunderstanding.
Yeah.
And so if I'm like I said, I feel a need to kind of ask everybody what the reasons why they're watching or the reasons why they're not watching. And
Mm-hmm.
ultimately, the tally that I'm running, a lot of people aren't watching. Like your response right now was, "Oh, I watched this one event for this one reason," but you're not. Your
Oh no, I'm
response
not a
wasn't, "I'm hooked on it," or "They've really got me
uh-uh.
hooked into this storyline," or whatever else.
No.
Yeah. And
No, I
so,
sometimes have a problem with just the commentators. Like I like
sure.
them. I mean, they're fine, but it's like I'm 63. Like, dude,
Yeah.
I'm like, come on, hit a bigger
Yeah.
audience,
Right.
but
Yeah.
and I get it. But I don't ever think I would have never thought that you were kind of dogging them.
No. Yeah.
You've always said, and you've said it about all the other things like the that the acid test, the surfboard acid test, whatever, and the stab in the dark stuff. You're always like, I couldn't do it any better. I think they're doing a fine job, but if they would just do it this way,
Right.
if they would
Yeah.
just incorporate this little thing into it, I think it would be more enjoyable, and it might get a bigger audience. And it's
Yeah.
like, as a I like if somebody says that about my boards, I'm like, oh well, then I need to add that into the board.
Right.
I need to not discount this. Somebody's talking about it. I need to use
Exactly.
this
Yeah.
to some, even if you just put it in your back pocket and just hold on to it. But I don't think you need to, you hit a nerve.
Yeah. And that's understandable. I mean, I don't,
But still, you're a grown up. It's like, come on.
right.
If you hit a nerve on with me, it's like,
I know.
whatever.
I know. Yeah. It's
I just roll
interesting.
right over it.
I was really kind of surprised by the reaction or the response, and how misguided, like how it wasn't leveraging the actual insight in it. And it was also, um, um, the audience that we have is super diverse and doesn't all feel one
Oh,
way about anything, and so
right.
to kind of put a
That's
whole like,
obvious.
yeah, and so to put a whole like thought on these people are anti us or this thing is like, wow, no, and that doesn't benefit your business in any way to think of your core consumer in those
Uh-uh.
terms.
No.
And it was interesting, but again, that's the only reason that's why I'm always kind of taking the tally of what
Yeah.
people's experience is with viewing it.
Yeah.
At any rate, what are you riding? What is the last surfboard that you've ridden?
My favorite board right now is what I consider it was. So I don't surf a lot in the winter. I got to change that because I got wetsuit from Neat Essentials, and I was like,
No way.
oh my gosh, I love this thing. And so, so I've got good stuff. I got good wetsuits and stuff, but I come out of winter and at 63, I have a tough time getting to my feet. Like my toes get wrapped up underneath my feet and I just struggle. And so the board I built for myself for coming out of that was just a platter. It's 6'8", 22 inches wide, 17 nose, 17 and a half tail, bit of an asymmetrical, kind of a little bit of what Cuca Pinto on Instagram does, with like a round tail on one side and a square tail on the other side. And I like that because it's subtle. It's not so in your face, but it's a twin fin and my fins are set up a little bit asymmetrical too. And, but that board, I rode it this morning. I can ride it in anything. And it's actually a 6.8 RP. So it's so crazy. I did a 6.8.5 out of a 6.8 RP.
Yeah.
And just left the rocker the way it was, just stock rocker. And it's probably one of the fastest boards that I have. And then I've got a long board and I've got a step up board and stuff, but I don't have a lot of boards.
Are there any other asymmetrical parts of the board other than the tail design and the fin placement?
Not on this one. I've got another one that has asymmetrical bottom. So it's got more rocker on my heel side than it does on my toe side. That one's got a little bit more stuff going on. And I like it okay, but it's not, I don't know. It's okay. I won't let anybody ride it because it's got a little quirk to it. And if you got to know the quirk to get around it. And so it lives in my shed. Nobody gets to see that one.
Are you making asymmetrical boards for customers?
Some, but not much. Mostly bottoms.
Okay.
Mostly it's just adding a little bit of rocker to the heel side or the toe side. But I've got a couple of guys that it's changed their surfing completely by doing that.
What do you find, like with the board that you rode this morning, what do you find the benefits of it to be?
Oh gosh, it glides like crazy. It's got so much glide, but I put V with a double concave in it, so it turns on a dime. And I ran the V a little farther up because I tend to surf off my front foot a little bit more. And so I can lean on my front foot and it actually responds. And our waves are so gutless, you kind of have to have that. You have to have more universal.
Which of those benefits do you attribute to the asymmetry, or what benefits do you attribute? So what is what does the asymmetry add for the board?
People like it. They go,
fair enough.
Oh, that's cool. I didn't know you did those. I'm like, yeah, I do everything.
But if you did two copies of that board and one of them was the square tail and the other one was the round tail, those boards would totally perform differently, right?
Not here.
Okay.
Not in our wave. Our wave is so gutless. It's like people here will buy a Channel Island thinking you're back to your price point thing. Channel Island's 700 and some change plus fins and a tail pad. You're out the door at about $1,000, for a 6.0 clear Channel Island. But they think that board's going to ride like it does for Bobby Martinez or Mikey February or Connor Coughlin, or those guys, it's like, and it's like, no, it doesn't work that way. Plus that board's built for Rincon and I don't know if you've noticed, but we don't have that.
Right.
And so those boards work really good when we get hurricane surf and that kind of stuff. But I watch those guys all the time and they're just struggling. But when I can get them on one of my boards and I change the bottom configuration, they're like, oh my gosh, this board does work.
Yeah.
And it works in everything.
Yeah.
And I think our industry's gotten kind of stuck, especially on performance boards, not so much on mid-lengths and fishes and all that stuff, but I think they've gotten so into every board has to have a single concave or it doesn't work.
Yeah.
And even the consumer does it. They'll pick up the board and look at the bottom to see if it has a concave and they won't buy it if it doesn't have one.
Right.
So I'm like, well, don't look at mine.
Yeah, that's fascinating.
So it's just a different dynamic. That's where I think living in the closet helps me,
I agree.
because I don't have any outside influences. And I think you had mentioned that earlier. I don't have that. I don't have a Skip Fry that I can look at his boards and touch them, and
Yeah. When you were out in California with Loveless in January, did you surf RenCon?
No, we looked at it. I saw it, but we didn't surf it. It was too cold. I'm a wimp.
Were there waves?
It was, yeah, there was a little wave the day we walked down and looked at it, but it was already getting dark. But it was super wonky, and I'm frothing. And Derek's like, dude, this is a horrible day at RenCon. Like,
Yeah.
do you see how many people are out? There's only like 40 people.
Yeah.
Like there would be 140 people if
Yeah.
it was good. And but I'm like frothing. I'm like I'm mind surfing the wave, and it was just so funny. I'm like, I want to come back here.
Yeah, totally.
But I don't want the crowd.
Dude, I hate surfing it. Like, but then every time I surf it, I get a wave that I'm just like, oh man, that's so fun. You just don't, I cannot get a wave of that quality anywhere else in my normal surfing life. And so I just have to come do it again. And then next time I look at it and there's 300 people out, and I'm like, I do not want to do this. And I struggle, and I'm constantly kind of in the way or out of position, and making way, giving way. And then I get one wave, and it's just like, this is why you get sucked into it every time.
Yeah. Oh, I would totally sit on the point and just get the leftovers. I'd be perfectly happy with what we get.
Yeah.
That would, even around the point, I'd be happy with that.
I know. Yeah.
Like if the wave was 50
tell yourself,
yards long, I'd be like frothing.
The thing is, I go out there with that same mentality, but then you start getting competitive, and you start moving, you start positioning, and then you just, it's in you,
Yeah.
So
as not competitive as I am, I'm super competitive.
It sucks it out of you somehow.
Yeah.
Well, Mike, this has been an absolute delight, and I really appreciate you doing it.
Yeah, this is fun.
It's a wonderful way to have my Friday morning coffee.
There you go.
So thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Gladly. I'll be in touch with you